Hello everyone. Today I'm reviewing the New American Standard Classic Reference Bible from Zondervan. This is the newly released brown genuine leather in buffalo. And I know a lot of people have been anticipating this release, and that is probably for the fact that up to this point there's not been a whole lot of options for New American Standard Bibles in a higher grade of material. There's been a big market for the New American Standard, but the Lockman Foundation wasn't very broad in their variety of publications as far as materials goes, as far as cover options. So over the past few years, that has started to change with Schuyler releasing premium editions, and then Zondervan releasing premium in the Premier Collection, and then now I think Lockman is starting to come out with some nicer ones as well. If not, they will be soon, I'm sure. So this reference edition is an update of a previous run, only in a higher quality material. So this is the box, very clean. You have same information on the side. It is a single piece clamshell. The back has some information. I will hold this there for a second so you can pause if you want to look at it. Then you have ISBN, or the retail is about $130. So a decent price for a genuine leather Bible. We'll move that out of the way. And this is the Bible itself. So you'll see that the buffalo is relatively pronounced. There's some vertical lines in there, and you can see when you fold it over it does crease pretty well, so it's got some character. Not a super pebbly kind of grain, but it is pronounced. Got perimeter stitching, 5 raised spine hubs, and then Holy Bible, New American Standard, and Zondervan. And as with the other publications that Zondervan and Thomas Nelson comes out with, I really appreciate the simplicity on this spine. Just having the Holy Bible and then translation and publisher makes for a really clean spine that's not cluttered. That would be one thing that I don't really care for, but it doesn't bother me a whole lot, but it is noticeable. Opening this up, you have a synthetic liner, perimeter gilt line, and then you have buffalo leather cover on the front. And then you can see here it is perimeter stitched, and corners aren't super great, but nothing to complain about. You do have edge lined here, and your head and tail bands are brown. You do have 2 3/8" ribbons, a gold, kind of an off gold, yellow gold, and brown. And then you do have kind of a red or even rust under gold art gilding. It's not pristine. The golding's pretty consistent, but on the outer edge here you can kind of see it's not super consistent all the way through with the red part, but it isn't too bad for what you get here. Opening this up, we have presentation page, and then you have your Classic Reference Bible. You do have, similar to their other publications of Bibles, they have a verse in the front, and this one is glued to the spine or the tab there, so it is kind of wrinkly. Have your publication page. This one is a 2021 publication. It is printed in China. Then you have your contents, and getting into the foreword from the Lockman Foundation, and your principles of translation, and then general format explanation. And then the Old Testament. There are a couple things in this translation, or this edition, that are a little different than many of your plain text Bibles. And you'll see here you have book introductions. They are not very extensive, but they do have the pertinent information, and you have title and background, author and date, theme and message, and then a small outline. So basic, but it is a nice feature to have in even a Bible like this. you can kind of see the tab is a little stiff on this edition, and a Bible being this small, that's not unexpected. So you kind of do have a little bit of difficulty staying open in the early portion of the Bible. And it does kind of, even in the middle, it does force it up. But we'll get to that in a second. So here is your general format. You have verse by verse double column text with center column references. The text is a 9.5 NASB comfort print. That is a red letter edition, and it is line matched. So overall readability is really good. And I'm not sure the GSM on this Bible, but I'm guessing 28 to 30. The ghosting is very minimal, even with how thin the pages feel. After handling a bit, I think it is probably 28 to 30. I'm not sure exactly. If someone knows, comment. But that is what I could tell from it, from holding it. So the box does say that it has 17,000 translator notes. I'm not sure if that means just the notes or the references as well. I'm assuming it means both. So if I'm wrong, someone say so. But those are similar. They're evenly spaced throughout the text itself. They're not just clumped together, which does help being able to view them, not being all bunched together. Whenever there are more references than can fit here, they do come over into the bottom right-hand corner of the page. We shall move to, as you can see, poetic setting. It's inset verses, so the verse numbers are on the outside of the text, whereas on the paragraph, it's inset, so it switches. New Testament, you can see, is red letter. This is not a bad red letter. It's pretty consistent from what I've seen. It's not super dark, but compared to the black, it is a good complement. And I know no red letter can be perfect as far as consistency. I think that's just a fact of Bible publishing. But overall, this one looks good. Obviously, Old Testament quotations are in bold capital letters. Capital letters, sorry, not bold. As is typical with the New American Standard. Another additional feature that this Bible has, as is stated on the cover box, is an additional 14 in-text charts and maps. And aside from the book introductions, that's just another little thing that they added in here that I think is really helpful, especially in a reference edition like this. Here you can see where the cross-references crossed over into the bottom of the text in the column. So here's one here. You have countries of people mentioned at Pentecost. I'm not sure that there's a theme of what is highlighted in these captions, but it does seem to help with the flow of kind of the biblical story. There's reference here and from at the beginning of the New Testament, kind of from Malachi to Christ, just connecting the Old Testament to the New Testament. I think a lot of them have to do with significant features of the storyline of the Bible. There's some Old Testament references to the festivals, sacrifices, and then in New Testament to Paul's journeys and stuff like that. So it helps for understanding Scripture, which is a nice thing that I wasn't expecting in a Bible like this. So that was cool. And finally, your concordance is actually quite extensive, and it is because it is a dictionary concordance thesaurus. It is a combination, and I'm not sure of the number of references in here, but it is 3 column, and it is quite large, and it does contain significant amounts of information for such a small Bible. So another thing that they added in here that was a really beneficial for a reference edition, kind of helps in study. You have your note regarding the type, and then you have 8 maps. Again, these ones are on a little bit more glossy cardstock than some of the others maybe, but overall, not bad. Typical Zondervan maps. Now, the only critique I would have, two critiques. There are two critiques that I have with this Bible. One, the main one, is the text running into the gutter. You can see here that it gets swallowed up by the gutter significantly in many places. Part of that is due to the fact that the tab is so stiff. Once that actually lays, if that were to lay down, it would not be quite as bad. However, it still does affect the reading. And this one is noticeable to the point where it is kind of bothersome. The other thing would be that the gilt line doesn't really serve its purpose compared to what they usually do for Bibles. Usually the gilt line kind of borders the text block. In this edition, you can see that you can't see it unless you open it. It's pretty much hidden by the text block, which actually goes to the edge of the cover where the gilt line actually is. That's just a aesthetic feature that was off, but it kind of defeats the purpose of a gilt line because when it's open, you only see the edge because you can't see the bottom or the top. So that's the two things that really hinder this. The gilt line, not so much, but the text in the gutter kind of hinders this as being a Bible that is super recommendable in the sense of being good all around. I think it will actually work itself out once that tab starts breaking in, but just on the initial, that is kind of hard, and I did have difficulty occasionally depending on where I was. For a couple comparisons on this one, initially we will look at the NASB large print thin line in Buffalo. This is probably its closest competitor because it's same publisher, same translation, same cover option. However, the leathers are different. Now the blue one here, the large print thin line, is much softer and much more pliable even with the synthetic liner, and you can feel it to the touch. It's soft. This one's a little bit more coarse and it's not quite as pliable. The other thing I'll point out is this one also has the gilt line problem. That was just something that these editions had for some reason. Text-wise, the large print thin line is, as I said, a 10.5, and this one is a 9.5, so it's 1 degree, or however you say that, different. Overall, this one lays a little bit flatter and doesn't have the gutter problem. This one, you can kind of see similar design, verse by verse, both verse by verse, but this one does not have the center column cross references. And the second one I will compare here is the ESV New Classic Reference, and this is the closer comparison as far as size and actual layout. This one is the 40th or 400th anniversary edition hardback one, but you can see the text block itself is very similar in size, and the interior is also quite similar. Very comparable in both layout and text size. I think it's probably the same or close to it. This is probably a 9 point. Now obviously the opacity on this one is not quite as good, but overall the layout is pretty much the same. Although this one is not verse by verse, it's paragraph format. So those are the comparisons that I have to look at with this one. So overall, this is not a bad Bible. The only thing I would really have to say negatively is that gutter being crowded by the text. Other than that, that's really the only structural thing that is kind of annoying. But overall, not a bad Bible. Really happy that they're coming out with new stuff. I'm really liking the extra features in this one, and just the overall quality is very nice, and they're doing a really good job, especially with their ribbon choices, they're raised hubs on the genuine leather editions and just the edge lining. Some people will complain about the edge lining, just being, obviously that does create a problem here, and paste down would lay flat, but it does add a structural integrity aspect to these editions. So that's my review of the New American Standard 1995 text Classic Reference Bible from Zondervan.